Hello, I'm Billy McCarthy, and welcome to this edition of MHS Mini Views. Today we will be talking to Mr. Paul Ciavola regarding project-based learning. How are you doing, Mr. Ciavola, today?
I'm doing well. Thanks, Bill.
Alright, so our first question is, what is project-based learning and how did it develop?
Well, project-based learning, I think, is an attempt to try and keep students engaged in learning and having them do rather than sitting back passively and just listening to, their English teachers like myself drone on in lecture. I think that's really an attempt to create an authentic experience where students are creating a product that they can be proud of while learning what they need to know in relation to whatever course it is they're studying.
Alright, so another thing people want to know are, what are some projects that have been utilized in project-based learning?
Well, from my personal experience, being part of the ninth grade STEM team, they've been wide-ranging. We started with looking kind of to space, creating capsules and trying to come up with innovative solutions of how a certain shape or design could be used and then reused, so that way we're not just dumping out space junk once we're finished with a particular portion of a rocket or a space shuttle. Others have dealt with alternative energies, both trying to find alternative energy solutions here for MHS to reduce the costs of energies and reduce the use of fossil fuels. But we've also extended that and challenged students to then look at a global destination, whether it's Dubai or San Francisco or Sydney, Australia, and trying to come up with alternative ways of providing energy that would be both efficient in regards to cost, but also a whole lot friendlier to the ecosystem.
That's really interesting, yeah. Another question is, how does project-based learning help with standardized testing?
That's a good question, and I think a lot of teachers struggle with that because they feel like they have to cover such a wide array of curricular responsibilities, and they're wondering how are we going to get to everything, how am I going to cover all of my units, all of my standards that are required by the curriculum frameworks through a project? And my response to that is creatively, that ultimately many of these projects that we've constructed, whether it was the alternative energy one or another project we did with the Internet of Things and looking at how so many devices are now smart connected. And as we develop these projects, I questioned, well, how does English fit into all of this? But ultimately, as a team, we're able to kind of identify, well, many of the writing standards that students need to develop and the skills necessary for research in relation to, say, history. We were able to embed them into the project. Meanwhile, Mr. Brown was able to then utilize certain physics standards that were in relation to the project itself. And certainly mathematics became a part of it as well as we tested these prototypes. So while on the surface, it seems as though teachers might not be able to cover all the material that they need to, if you're creative and you're strategic about how you're creating these projects, oftentimes you can kill two birds with one stone. Right? You can keep students engaged in doing something authentic and rigorous, while at the same time meeting those same standards that maybe in the past we covered through lecture or more standardized forms of education.
All right, well, I think that answers most of our questions that we had here, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
That was this edition of MHS Mini Views. I'm your host, Billy McCarthy.